welcome to our second episode of The Story of Us. Today I have my beautiful friends, Ricardo and Jane. Um, just a reminder, the purpose of this podcast is to find the things that unite us, all of us, and to see with the light of the eyes, through the eyes of other people, how they think and how they feel, and to stop being afraid of these things that we see from afar and we don't. So, um, again, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Very happy to be here.
That's my pleasure. Just for the story, I want to tell how I met you. I remember it was that day. A friend of mine invited me. I didn't know that I would meet a group of people. I thought I was coming to meet him. And surprisingly, I arrive and I see a bunch of people and I'm just like, oh God, no, because I was such in a bad place emotionally. And I see all these people and I'm just like, oh boy, this is not happening. I don't know how, but I finally get to sit close to you, next to you. And I don't know, that was the perfect, I think it was so perfect that I sat just close to you and we started to chat and you were just so kind and your personality just vibrate with me and I remember you told me one thing and I went back that made me kind of reflect and meditate about, and that day you listened to me and I really appreciate that. It was really important for me because I was a mess emotionally. And you told me, for somebody who is my age, life is so short. You don't have to enjoy things. Life is short. I remember going back home. So I knew from that place that I want to meet you again. I have to, and luckily we kept in touch. And yeah, so I just wanted to share that for now. And I met you both after you. I met you both and came to realize also Jamie is such a beautiful soul, very kind and gentle as well. So would you mind telling me a little bit about you, your personality, what you do, what are your hobbies, and just a general things about yourself?
Okay. You want to go first?
My name is Jim, and I've been married to Ricardo, or with him for almost 20 years now. And so what I do is I work as a designer. I design landscapes, gardens, mostly for residential projects. I think I'm the one that's probably the calmer of the two.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm usually the one that kind of brings the energy level down a bit and about help balances us out.
I tend to be more of a stressful person, so I want to get things done now.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's a balance. I feel like I kind of help him move forward, and he kind of tells me, "Wait a minute, take a step back before you run into that fire." So it does balance the energy, I think.
I remember you told me that you were a writer as well. Right?
Yes,
you
I
write poems.
I write poetry, I write fiction, children's picture books. So I've had poetry and fiction published. And then I'm working on having a self-publishing children's picture books. And so I enjoy that as my job. I write content, marketing purposes online. And that's also good. It's also writing, and it helps me exercise my writing, my writing muscles. So that's as long as it's writing, I enjoy it.
Good. So I've heard that you have been married for like 20 years, almost 20 years. And how did you meet? I'm so excited to hear.
We met online on a dating website.
Okay.
Yeah, on a dating website. And I saw his profile, and I still remember the picture. It's a picture in Balboa Park, and he's sitting next to a fountain or in front of a fountain. And I thought, oh, this is a cute guy. And on his profile, it said that he liked to go hiking. And at that point, the only exercise I got was going to the gym. And I thought, well, I want to take up hiking. I wonder what that's all about. And then I got to realize it's just like walking up a mountain or a hill. It wasn't too complicated. But in the process of doing that, you get to talk, you get to, learn about each other. And that's where we started, we started dating.
So it'll be 20 years next May. So almost 20 years. Working on the 20th year. So.
Yeah.
So that was like around 20, what years?
2004.
Oh, 2004. So like you went to the hiking with him and then you start to, and what was the name of the app? Don't tell me Tinder.
No, it was like way back. I don't even know if it's still around.
It was called Adam for Adam. And it was a website for men, obviously.
Yeah, but
So yeah, it wasn't the Cupid one.
no. But interestingly enough, I think the first year we were together, we argued all the time.
Yeah, it was probably within the first few days. So.
Yeah, we had our first disagreement.
After 2 days.
Yeah, it was, and I think because, if you have two men, we're raised as heterosexual men, so we're raised to want things our way. And you put two men in a relationship, each one wants their own way. So I feel like that was part of it, and he thought I was stubborn. I thought he was stubborn too. But I feel like we right away we understood each other. We both had the same set of values, and I've never been about money and things, material things, and neither has he, growing up in the Midwest. And so I felt like we had that commonality. Like we both had the same sense of humor. I feel we both liked the same television shows, and we're the same generation, so we had a lot in common in that respect. So I think that for me, at least, that was what served as the foundation.
Wait, I know, like, when you meet someone for the first time, you just go on a date. Like, but at what moment did you decide, like, oh, I think I want to move on to a serious relationship from this date?
I think it was pretty early on. I think within the first month.
Yeah, I needed a place to stay too.
Yeah. So let's just say that he moved
That
in.
is a good reason to get in a relationship.
He moved into my place within the first 4 weeks. So
yeah,
I felt sorry for him because he needed a place to
I
stay.
didn't have anywhere to sleep, so he let me stay with him. And then I think, my mom always told me, before you marry someone, she's like, live with them, because you don't know a person until you live with them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like quickly you get to know the other person, and I think that in some ways helped. It's not the dating. We go back to each other, to each other's respective apartments. It was we learning how to live with one another.
Yeah.
So, but I feel that commonality of values he's very patient. He's very down to earth, and I feel like that helps me just slow down a bit, because I'm always like, we have to figure this out now, and he's like, let's step back and think about it. I'm like, no, it has to get done now. So,
and then we were together 4 years before we got legally married.
That was my next question. You just have ahead of my, like you said, that was 2004. You said, and by that time was the gay marriage already legalized in the United States?
No, it wasn't until 2008. So we had a small window in the fall of 2008.
Only in California.
In California, where we could legally get married. So. So we jumped on the chance.
Yeah, because then when the election happened that year, in November of that year, the voters decided that they wanted to ban marriage between people of the same sex again. So luckily we made it within that window, and our marriage is still valid after that point until the Supreme Court ruled in, I think, 2014 that nationwide marriage between people of the same gender was allowed. But it was kind of a shot. We call it a shotgun wedding because
it happened very quickly. So
Yeah.
It was like, let's do it.
We
Yeah.
had to go down to the courthouse and
Mm.
get married, and it was more of like my at my workplace, a
Mhm.
coworker had gotten married to his husband,
Mhm.
right? And I said, "Oh, so and so got married," and I looked at him and I was like, "Well, when are you going to ask me?" And he's like, "I've been waiting for you to ask me." And I said, "So you want to get married?" He's like, "Well, get married."
So that happened just in an evening, like that, just on a
Mhm.
conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we were at a supermarket or something, and was just talking. So, but then he actually called me while I was at work
Mm.
to tell me there was an opening at the courthouse. So, did I want to get married? So I said sure, and then I went back to work. So
that was a proposal.
that's the big proposal.
Beautiful, simple, and mature. And I really want to know, how did you know that this is the person like that I want to spend the rest of my life with?
I'm not sure if you ever really know, in my opinion. And it's like you just go on a hunch, and it's like, okay, well, let's see where this goes. And I think obviously we'd been together for 4 years already, so we already had some history. So it's like, okay, we've already been through plenty of fights already, so
Mm.
we can probably work. We realized we could pretty much work through anything. So
And by fighting, I don't mean like I mean like disagreements,
Mhm.
things like that every couple has, mostly around money. That's the big thing
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, how do you know if that's the one? I don't know. For me, it wasn't like it hit me or something. It was just this quiet understanding that I'm like, I feel like I'm home in a way,
Mm.
And when I was single, I never liked being single.
Mm.
I didn't like dating. I didn't know. It was exhausting for me to go on a date and then I was like, find out, learn about this person, and then it turned out not to work out.
Yeah.
And honestly, since I was single, I just like, I just want to meet a nice boy,
Mm.
take me home and meet your mama and put the ring on my finger, and that's it. And I just want to get married. I mean, honestly, I'm much better at settling and being
Yeah.
settled down.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy dating. Dating was
Yeah.
not fun for me.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
And I think I really like what you said, and I think it's really important to find somebody that makes you feel home at home.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, home is not a place, but home is a person.
It's a person. And I know that because when I was a little boy, I asked my mother, "How do you know?" I said, "Mom, how do you know if you really love someone?" And she said, "Because you would be willing to go anywhere in the world with them. That's how you know."
I have goosebumps right now. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. Wow.
and I think especially right now because we are living abroad, and it's like we don't necessarily. Sometimes we feel like we don't have a home, but it
But
really,
you're home for each other.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is true when they say home is where the heart is. So it's like it's not necessarily a physical place or the house. It's more of where I'm at right now and who I'm with. And
Yeah. So I know this was not part of the question, but just things coming back now. Like, at what moment did you know that you actually love this person? Because I think on the first date, I just like, I kind of like this person. But when, like, at what moment did you know that I love this person actually, and I'm willing to commit to this person?
Do you want to answer that first, or should I answer that first?
I'm still trying to think of the answer.
I think for me, it was the two moments. It was, we would get into a lot of disagreements, but I still wanted to be with him. And it wasn't like they weren't bad disagreements. It was more about money or something really dumb. Like what kind of cereal did we buy and why did we buy it? Things like that. But it was also, I had already come out many years before that, and he had not come out to his parents yet. And so his parents were set to visit, and I did what probably you're not supposed to do, was to issue an ultimatum. And I said, I'm already 30-something years old. I've been out for a long time. I understand your parents are coming. I'm not willing to be your friend. either we're together or we're done.
Oh wow.
And
It's usually how it works. So.
and he wrote his parents a letter coming out to them.
Oh wow. Oh wow. How was it for you? Was
And
it like
they came out and they visited and we all met. They met him. Everybody. We had dinner together. So.
Oh, and I have to say something about the dinner because we went to a pizza place. This one here starts eating his pizza with a knife and fork. And so I'm like, okay, well, I better do it because I'm meeting his parents for the first time. And his parents are eating with a knife and fork. And his parents and I later on found out that we all just wanted to pick up the pizza and eat it because we were all starving. And I said, I didn't want to make a bad impression.
Yeah.
So I was using the knife and fork. And they're like, well, didn't want to make a bad impression. So we were doing the same. So it was all his fault.
So, I did it on purpose.
Oh, that's beautiful. So is at that moment, even in the midst of argument, you know that I want to be with this person.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's more of a progression. It's not like some people feel the love at first sight thing. But for me, it's just like one layer on top of another. So, and you go through things together, and then you have good and bad memories. And I don't agree with, I don't find it's the same where it's just the instant feeling of, oh, I'm in love with this person.
Right.
It's more of one that builds on every moment and memory. So.
Yeah, I think for me as well. I think it was gradual. It was learning, it was becoming friends, learning about each other. But yes, with every experience, it feels like that.
So
that
if
love.
I understand correctly, the base was the common values that you share. That was the base, and then you're just like, okay, let's see where this can go based on the value that we have in common, and also he's cute. So
Yeah. Well, no, definitely the physical aspect has to play into it.
yeah,
Where it doesn't
definitely.
work.
Yeah.
But I think he's right. It was every experience builds that. So like, for example, my father passed away this year. And so he was there. I remember that first day and he would ask me, what do you want to do? So we'd walk to the lake and I would walk and he would like follow me, like trying to make sure that I was okay.
Yeah.
And so I always remember that, he was just like, what is it that you want? What can I help with right now? And he also asked me, he said, what if I wasn't here? What would you have done? And I said, well, I probably would have kept running, to be honest. I would have moved. I've always tell him I'm like, move to Tajikistan and become a sheep herder. Only for the fact that I'm like, I'm so far away, no one can find me, type of thing, right? But the only reason this is home for me is because he's here. Otherwise, it's a nice place to be, but it's not the same.
I feel it. I absolutely feel it. That's beautiful. And I'm very, very intrigued to know, because we are in a society where the norms is to be straight. We know the standard family, a man and a woman. And I think you growing in a family where there was a mom and a dad, that's how they have, kind of educate you. Like, oh, you should have a girlfriend. At what moment did you know growing up that you prefer boys than girls? Like, how did you realize that for you?
I think you were much earlier than I was. I felt it when I was probably like 12 to 14 years of age, but kept resisting it because it was like realizing that I wasn't like the other boys in my school and like through like middle school, high school. And so for me, it was constantly just fighting that battle. Like I was resistant to it. And so and for me, it wasn't until much later in my life that I accepted it for myself. So, whereas he was like 2 years old, I think.
I was 5 in kindergarten.
Interesting.
I didn't know what it was because I back then there wasn't any information. There wasn't any internet. There wasn't any information. and I was too young to know. But I knew there were two boys in my class that, when I look back at it now, I had a crush on them, you know, and I always wanted to be around them. I liked how they dressed. I liked how we would play together. And then the moment became very clear when I was 5 that to me it felt like there's something wrong with me because the teacher wanted us to do an activity in class, little dance, and she kept trying to get me to hold this girl's hand. And I said, I don't want to hold her hand, I want to hold his hand. And the teacher's like, no, little boys hold little girls' hands. I was like, no, I don't want to hold her hand. I want to hold his hand. And so it was at that moment that I felt like, oh, something's different. Something, but I didn't have the language to describe what that was. So I knew since then, since I was 5.
But I guess being in the society where the norms is boy with girls, did you have like a girlfriend at some point, obviously?
No.
No?
Never.
You never had a girlfriend?
I've never even kissed a woman.
Amazing. Beautiful.
I've never even held hands with a woman,
You have to.
other than like a girlfriend that knows I'm gay,
Yeah.
right? But not as, I've never had a girlfriend. I've never dated a girl. None of that. So.
And I had a girlfriend in high school, but after that I was just surrounding myself with a lot of female friends. The majority of my friends throughout my life were female. And so I think I balanced it that way. It wasn't the, I mean, I had plenty of, and my family members thought I had all these girlfriends, and they were just friends,
Yeah.
But I was the same way in high school. I would go to dances and then get home and my father would ask me, how did you dance? And I said, yeah, I said dance with 5 girls, and he thought that I was a stud. And I was like, no, I was just me and the ladies having a good dance.
He was very proud.
Yeah, but it was just, we're all friends.
And the father would be, my son.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, and then at the same time, it was, I think I liked that because it provided the cover so that he wouldn't ask any other questions. So I kind of flew under the radar most of my childhood and adulthood.
Was it difficult for you emotionally? Did you felt different? Like you said, it was like a fight, constant fight. Did you try at some point to not feel what you were feeling at some point of your life because you were saying, this is not right, this is not normal, I don't want to be like this. You try to push it away, but you can't just help it.
Yeah, I was brought up in a very religious background, and so for me, I went more the direction of church and religion and trying to change myself that way, which obviously did not work. So
yeah, I was raised Catholic and I went to a Catholic high school. So what I would do is I would pray the rosary all the time. So I would carry the rosary with me, and I would always be praying and asking God, can you please change me? Because I know that I'm broken and I need you to fix me. And so there were many times where I wouldn't go outside because if I'd go outside and then I would see a boy my age who was attractive and I'd have those feelings and I was like, it's not working, I have to pray harder. And so I'd go back and pray and I'd spend hours just praying the rosary all the time, asking, can you please change me? And it not working would make it more difficult. I'd get more depressed. I wouldn't want to go outside. I didn't want to see people because I was afraid that the moment I stepped out my door and I would see people like my peers, men of my age, all those feelings come back. And I couldn't handle it. So it was very difficult, I have to say.
Did you have somebody that was like a safe place for you to share all this struggling that you're dealing inside you?
No, especially not in those days. In the 80s and 90s, it definitely wasn't talked about like it is now. So yeah, it wasn't.
It was very, I think it was very difficult because back then it was okay for churches to say, you know, you're going to hell, you're a sinner. Um, Comedians on TV would make fun of gay people all the time. It was okay to use gay, anti-gay, you know, like slurs. Um, it was acceptable to beat up gay people just for them being who they were. So if I didn't have anyone, I didn't have anyone to talk to.
Yeah.
I just kept it to myself, and I just prayed that I'm like, I need to survive. I need to get through this. So when I finally went to my first gay bar in my 20s, I walked in, and I remember the moment I walked in. It was this very small little place, and I saw all these men there, and it wasn't like, wow, look at, there's all these cute guys. It was, you made it too.
Wow.
You know, you also survived. You got to this point. And that was the first thought that came to me.
And at what point in your life did you decide that enough is enough? I'm just gonna put it out. Like, how was that? Like, how do you call it? How coming for you?
Mm-hmm.
How was it? Like, were you tired? You just say, I cannot do it anymore. You have already told us he was cause of him. Ultimatum. You say it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's done. But like, how was it for you?
I was going to community college, and I was driving every morning. And every morning, as I would turn left to get into the parking lot, I would tell myself, it's just part of my development. I'm just slower. And me being attracted to other boys, other men, is just part of the natural development towards heterosexuality. And I'll get there. I'm just slower than most people. And finally, one day, I turned left and I said, no, I can't do this anymore. It's not a phase. I just have to learn to accept it. Which was not easy, but that was that moment. I still remember it. It was a morning that I was driving into school, and that it was not easy. It was not.
Did you decide to go back home and just to say to your parents?
No, I didn't say anything for a long time. I didn't say anything to anybody. Even back then, it wasn't safe. It wasn't like, you know, I feel like there's been more progress, but back then you couldn't say it. You know, I couldn't say it. I was afraid that I'd get kicked out of my house. I couldn't say it at school because I was afraid it was a Catholic school, so I was afraid they wouldn't let me come back to school anymore. So you didn't say anything. You know, you hoped and prayed that I'm like, just get me through 18, 19, so that I can be an adult and figure something out.
Yeah, the world of
Yeah.
the house. But at what moment did you announce the thing to your family? Like, how was it? Was it hard?
No, I think my mom had suspected. She told me when I
The
told her.
moms always know. They
She
know.
said, I knew. She's like, a year before you told me because you stopped talking about girls. So what I would do is I would say, oh, I saw this really cute girl at school in my biology class, you know, and then that was enough to just like, okay.
Keep them.
Yeah, and like
Yes.
throughout the bait, like be satisfied with that.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend who was gay, and I was hanging out with him, and I said, you know, I was in my room one night. She came by, and I said, you know, I have something to tell you. I'm like my friend. And she's like, I kind of knew for the last year. She goes, it's okay. But she said she had educated herself by watching TV shows at that time. In the 80s, there were more, you know, educative type shows. And she's like, I learned about gay people that way. She's like, I didn't really know them, like who they were. And she's like, I had all these different ideas. But she said, by watching those shows, I learned that gay people were okay. So by the time I came out to her, she was like, okay, I know where to place this idea. So that was how I came out to her.
And what about you? How after your parents read that later, they just get themselves to the dinner without any argument? It's like, Oh, nice. Okay, let's go in.
Luckily, they were in Florida. I was in California, so and then they were coming to visit a few weeks after that. So, but yeah, there wasn't really any conversation necessarily. It was just we just sort of moved on. I mean, I come from a Midwestern family, so you don't really talk about stuff that much anyway. It's just that you sort of move through life quietly, I guess. So, but I had already come out to other family members and friends at that point, so it wasn't, the first time. I think a lot of times parents are usually the last to know.
Yeah.
Because those are the ones that you
Yeah.
hesitate to come out to. So, but by this time I was already in my 30s. So
Kind of mature.
Yeah.
Did you feel supported by your family and your friends? Oh.
Yeah, I didn't have any bad issues. I mean, I do have quite a few friends that, when they came out to their families, it's like, they excommunicated or would not speak to them, or so that's always the big fear I know with a lot of gay people is being rejected by your family or your friends, but I didn't necessarily have that, luckily. So
I had a mixed reaction. My mom was very positive. I told one friend at junior college, and she was very supportive. And then I had a few friends that were not, and that was okay because it was like, the friendships weren't too strong to begin with, so I was like, it's all right, it's all for the best. But then you as you come out, you start building your own family.
Yeah.
Of those people who will support you, and especially back then, it was not easy. There wasn't any such thing as gay marriage or gay straight alliances in the high schools. There wasn't the representation you have today. It didn't exist. You couldn't just log onto the internet. There was no internet.
Yeah.
You just whatever you saw, whatever you could get your hands on, which oftentimes there wasn't anything. The only thing that I had at home was there was this little encyclopedia book, and in it had the topic of homosexuality, and it talked about how, it was like a health guide for moms, and it talked about how it was a disorder that needed to be treated through psychiatric means, and this was an older book. So that was it. That was the only information I had.
And I'm wondering to know, how is it like for you at your job place to be, and I guess back then that would have been harder than today. How is it to be a gay man in a workplace where we know about all this toxic masculinity and patriarchy, so society? Like, did you have some interaction with your colleagues about like them making fun of you or treating you not as the same with the others?
I think even back in the 90s, for most people, they would not have come out at their workplace because, I mean, you would definitely have issues where people were either not hired for a job or maybe not promoted, but they could never, even though it's illegal in the U.S., it's like it was hard to prove, but it's also not. It just sort of gets pushed aside, I think. So, but I definitely have witnessed people that didn't get the promotion they should have gotten, or maybe didn't get the job because of that. I didn't necessarily have issues myself, but I also wasn't out and open with my coworkers.
Like your personal life was none of their business, and that's it.
Whereas nowadays, that's not something I worry about. But I also work on my own, so that kind of helps a little bit. So, but with my clients, most of them know I'm pretty open about it, but I don't exactly. It's not something I announce like on my business cards. It's like,
watch out, I'm gay.
Yeah, it's not in my company name.
Yeah.
Jim's Gay Landscape.
Yeah, I think it just, for me, it just depended on what time in my life that was. As I got, as I got older and I gained more experience, I gained more confidence. And I also had a shorter level, less patience for that, for that type of behavior. And so early on, I wasn't confident enough to be out. And then as I went to college and grad school and entered the workforce, I was pretty much, this is who I am. So my straight colleagues would talk about their spouses, I would talk about my spouse. Just like oh, today is sunny, yesterday was rainy. I didn't present it like anything other than what it was. And I felt like in some ways people relaxed around me because they're like, oh, okay, it's you and Jim. To the point where the ladies at work were jealous because Jim was a really good cook. And so I would bring my lunch and he would pack my lunch in the morning and I would be there in the break room and I'd have all my food and they're like, oh my God, what did Jim make you? And I was like, oh, it's like this shrimp salad, oh, I've got mashed potatoes and it's got this roast beef. And they're like, oh my God, I have something to go home and talk to my husband about because my husband does not prepare me this kind of food. And so it's like bonding over those same things all couples have, to the point when we still lived in the United States at my last job. By that point, I'm more of a mentor. So I had people I supervised who were gay and also straight, much younger. And so I felt like as much as I could be a role model for them and show them that I'm open about who I am and that this is a safe workplace and to make sure that they let me know if they had any issues, I felt like, okay, I'm helping to change that, to change the environment in which we work. So that makes me happy.
It's absolutely beautiful.
I think for us living here in Albania now, the kind of the tricky thing or the challenge is it's almost like looking back in time for us because, and that's why we are just who we are here and we're open with people about who we are because we're hoping that other people will see that because in many ways it's as if we're back in 1970s US where gay people here, the locals, really can't come out, and it can be dangerous. They could, lose their jobs. They could lose their families. So it's difficult actually to see that because it's like, okay, we've already lived through this, and it's like trying to live through it again.
Just like bringing you back into the past again.
And I feel like it's even more regressive in the 70s. At least in the 70s, there was movement towards being open. I realize like in the 50s where it's just, there's absolutely no visibility whatsoever. And so I tell Jim, I said, I'm willing to take that risk to be open because other people can't. And there's not a lot that I can lose here. I don't have family here. I don't have a reputation to uphold with my families per se. So I can take that risk. And I'm hoping that in taking that risk and people who I interact with know me as who I am, then maybe that'll say, hey, let me stop and think about this again. Let me take a second look. Maybe not change your mind, but let me just pause for a second. And we've met a lot of great people here in Albania who live here, who are locals, who are very supportive. And then there are other people I see comments online who are just way on the opposite side, but not very nice. But a lot of people here that we've met, that we've made friends with, who are very supportive. Young people that are just like, what's the big deal? And at the same time, we've had run-ins with young people who like can't figure it out.
What I find interesting is that we see people, and at the moment we know things about themselves. If I know that you're gay or you're straight, especially for the gay people, it's just like now you're defined by your sexuality. Is that we cannot see anything else than that. Like we don't like. I remember once I I was talking with a friend of mine because I'm from a very religious background as well, and she made a joke, and I sent like a meme, like somebody with the hands up, amen, and she said, "No, don't send me this." I said, "What? Why?" She said, "Oh, that girl plays. She's gay. She plays in a show where she's gay," and I was just like. I don't know. I didn't even know her. For me, it was so funny. So I sent you, and but that made me realize, like, you see, this is a person. She has a name. She has a career, a family, dreams. But that is not see anymore.
Mhm.
What we see is that she's gay. And that's so sad. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and being open to this. And I don't know who's going to listen to this, but I surely know. I personally felt you when you said you pray to be changed because I've heard a lot of stories. People say I've prayed to be changed. I've prayed God, and from my background, today I am doing this, and I've come to realize that people are just people, and people are beautiful. I see souls. I do not see genders or sexuality. But in my background, it was. I remember I will never be sitting here with you. Like I will see you at a distance. I'll be like, because we were taught it's devilish. They are devilish. They choose to be. That's what we have been told. Like it's a style of life, it's a way of life. They choose that life which is against God, so where they're gonna end up. So and we are on a mission as religious people to change the world, or to change people, but not with love, just with thou shalt not do this, thou shalt do that, which is sad. Speaking of that, are you believers personally? Like, do you believe in God? And how do you perceive God?
I mean, I would say that yes, I do believe because I like I said I had a very strong religious background, more of a Protestant type upbringing in the U.S. So I still have strong religious beliefs and spirituality. Um, Maybe I'm not so much into organized religion so much, but I still have a strong belief in the spirit and religion. Maybe, yeah, I don't know if I would coin it like to a certain religious group.
When I was raised Catholic, went to a Catholic school as a young kid and then also high school. And so, and still to this day, many of my beliefs are Catholic in their origin. Mostly, I would say, I have a very strong attraction towards the saints, all the different saints, and mostly because those are real people that lived through these struggles, and it's more deriving inspiration from that. And I'm like, okay, if I can find strength in those stories, then I can overcome whatever it is, whatever obstacle I'm facing. I also was in my 20s and 30s very much involved with the Church of Religious Science in the United States. And that influenced my thinking a lot. And so I do believe that there is a creator. I don't think it's not an old man sitting in a chair somewhere, but it is definitely a force that created the entire universe, that created everything around us. And one of my nieces asked me about if I believed in hell. And I said, no, I don't. And I said, because the God that I believe in would never have such a place. I said, the God that I believe in is about love and not punishment for whatever you were supposed to do or not to do, or whatever, all that silliness. And so with religious science, we were taught you were born perfect. There is no original sin. Whereas in Catholicism, we were taught that you're broken from the minute you pop out of the womb. And religious science really helped me to process a lot of things. And it said there is no opposing force of good and evil, because two equal forces on opposite ends would end up destroying itself, would destroy each other. There is only good. And the reason there is evil is because people misuse the power of good for selfish reasons.
Beautiful.
But there's no Satan, there's no hell, there is no creator that would put you in this world and then test you to see if you're going to make it. You know, are you going to get through the finish line or are you just going to fail? And I told my niece, I said, I'm a writer. I said, I would never purposely create a character to fail in my story. And if I, in my limited knowledge, can understand that, imagine a creator that encompasses everything, how much love that creator has. And so I said, no, I said, I don't believe in hell.
And where are you at now, like with your spiritual journey, if I may say so? Do you join groups, or how do you practice your faith at this point of your life?
I'm not involved in any sort of group or church. It's just more, I guess, inward. Just more of myself. Like I said, I'm not so much into the organized religion aspect anymore.
I think for me, I enjoy going into churches, regardless of which denomination, because for me, it's a sacred space, whether it's a mosque or it's a Christian church or whichever, because that's where people gather to ask for help or to celebrate that love. And so for me, it's all about energy. That is a divine vortex. It's an energy center where when we were traveling through England, and I would go to different churches and I would attend service there, and I would tell them I was just in a church that's been there for 700 years and I got to go to service there. And I said, for me, that ties me to everyone before me and everyone after me, because within that space, we celebrate that love. And so that's how I approach it.
See, as we travel around the world, that's one thing we do is often as we visit churches or any sort of religious type of building. You know, for one, it's to study the history and the architecture, but the other thing is just to experience that energy and that spirituality.
Yes, and for me, one of the most powerful moments was we were traveling in Mexico and we went to a small town called, what was it called? Hidalgo. It was Dolores Hidalgo. And I said, I want to take you to a church. So in Mexican history, slavery was legal. And in the 1820s, there was a Mexican priest named Father Hidalgo. And in this church, he rallied the people to abolish slavery, to call for revolution, to say, we must end this injustice now. And when I sat in that building, I'm like, that energy is still here. It's all around me. And that is how I experience God, I think, is in these different churches, these different spiritual centers. And I sometimes I just sit there in the quiet.
Beautiful. Just meditating and be present in the moment, feeling what has happened before you.
Exactly.
That's beautiful. So you said that you have been married for almost 20, or you have been together for almost 20 years. According to you, what is the secret for a long-lasting relationship?
Patience would be one. What else? I think also just being open-minded and, open for whatever might come next, so it's like when one spouse says, I'm not happy here, I want to move to Albania.
That was me.
For example. I'll just pull that one out. Then you just kind of roll with it, and it's like, okay, let's see where this takes us. So that would be my suggestion.
I would say having a common set of values, when you look at the world in a similar way, it helps create that foundation so that when things do go wrong, which they often do, you still have that. And so that one example, when my father passed away, he was really the only person I could rely on at that moment, because everything else had fallen apart. And so my family wasn't really, they weren't in a place to be supportive. They couldn't. They were still dealing with it. So I would say that. I would say a sense of humor. And he's always making me laugh about one thing or another. Because I tend to be sometimes too serious, and then he'll make a joke, and then I was like, okay, I can't be serious anymore. I can't be upset.
Yeah.
And he told me, he's like, when my father passed away, he goes, this will pass. It's gonna be okay. So yeah, I don't think it's too hard. I think it's pretty simple. We have our ups and downs, like everybody else, but I think knowing that there's somebody with me who loves just the same things, and sees life, we both want experiences, not necessarily material things. You have to be on the same way of looking at things, I think.
So this is very important, in this generation, like my generation, where everything is fast. We want things now, and where we tend to give up when this doesn't work exactly like I want. Oh, you want to move to Albania? I don't want, so we speed up. So thank you for sharing. I think it's very important, and I wish and I dream to see more marriages and more couples or more relationships last more and more. Like the recent statistic has shown, like the rates of divorces are going crazy high, and that's really interesting. Um, just to end this beautiful conversation, let's say there's somebody outside there who is confused about not only gender or sexual orientation, but who is confused about who he is or who they are. What will be the advice to give to such a person?
I think for me would be to find one person that you trust, that you feel safe, that you can talk to. Because sometimes when you're by yourself, you can't solve the problem. You need to be able to talk to somebody. Otherwise, you end up suffering in silence. And one thing I learned was that suffering only creates more suffering. There's no resolution to it. So having one person, if it's possible, to confide in, that I feel is like the first step.
Yeah, I would agree. Looking for some resource or a group or even one friend maybe, and then just being true to yourself and just telling, if nothing else, just telling yourself that you are perfect the way you are, and it's just trying to work through life that way. But
now, specifically, if there's somebody, especially a man or even a lady, struggling with their sexualities, trying to pray or to fight to change or go into these scientific experiences to try to change their orientation, what would you say to them?
I would probably say to them, because I did my research master's thesis on the ex-gay movement, on people trying to change. And since I completed that research more than 20 years ago, even the leaders of the ex-gay movement, many of them have come out and said, this never worked. And are now leading openly gay lives with a same gender spouse. The one thing that I could say is, don't torture yourself. There's no need. You may think that denying yourself and feeling alone and suffering and that's all going to get you to heaven, but that just brings you more suffering. And in the end, it doesn't resolve anything. You're still in the same place. So for me, I think it would be very important for that person to find at least one person to confide in and to have that safe space where they can talk to them. That'd probably be the most important thing.
Yeah, just once again, accepting who you are on the inside and knowing that you're a good person.
Yeah.
And also, when I came out, I didn't think I was a good person. I didn't feel human, to be honest. I felt like I'm less than human for what it is that I feel. And so it was years of trying to get myself to a place where I'm like, I'm okay. I'm actually okay.
Yeah.
But for many, I would say at least 2 to 3 years, I felt like I was more like an animal. Like I wasn't worthy. That I said my campaign, my efforts to pray this and to change failed.
Yeah.
I'm a failure. Even though I'd come out, I was still in a place where I just felt like everything had fallen apart. So I guess to be patient with oneself, to be kind to oneself, and to allow oneself to make mistakes. I make at least 12 mistakes a day before I walk out the front door. And I tell people, it's okay.
Yeah.
You're going to make mistakes. That's fine.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with me.
Thank
I've
you.
learned so much, and that was so beautiful. And again, my suspicions about you will confirm. You're so beautiful souls. So
Thank you.
beautiful souls. And I really hope that if somebody listening to this, that they have learned from you, from your experience, and that they will have the courage to do so. And I would love to have you again one of these days just for this kind of beautiful conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.